Ladies and gentlemen, brand new to VOD, Bob Odenkirk in Nobody. Let's talk! Start off, I want to say I actually really like the opening scene in this movie. I don't know why. There's just something about it that sets up the entire film. It cuts to a little bit of a weird editing routine montage, kind of setting up Bob Odenkirk's character Hutch as a guy just in the grind, working the 9 to 5, a little bit distanced from his wife, connecting to his kids, just setting up that maybe he's kind of living a life a lot of people are living. There's an attempted robbery at his house that he gets involved in, his kid gets involved in, and he kind of has a not pull the trigger moment. He lets things go, and you start to see very quickly that there's some stuff boiling beneath the surface there, and a life that he used to live that's going to come into the mix. So, one of the things I want to say, first and foremost, before I get into anything else with this movie, is I just want to say the word woo! Styling, profiling, limousine riding, jet flying, kiss stealing, wheeling, dealing, son of a gun. Because when I woo, I Ric Flair. But that's how this movie made me feel. It was fun. There's a couple of people involved in this film. They're involved in John Wick, I believe. And it seems like now what's happening in any film where some guy who didn't appear to be a guy, but then all of a sudden starts whooping the hell out of everybody, it's John Wick right away. First of all, let me just explain to you, John Wick's not John Wick. John Wick was parts of The Villainess, parts of The Raid, Taken, which came a long time before, just told and positioned in a different way for this audience. And I think that sometimes we get really caught up in what's original and what's not original. Let me break something down to you. Nothing's original. The presentation is what's original. The stories aren't. You know how many kung fu flicks I have seen that start with, my master has been beaten by another evil master and I must avenge him, going through a whole bunch of karate kung fu fights along the way? At least 134, and I loved almost all of them. The idea is, how many stories are there really in action? It's essentially bad guys who aren't really bad guys trying to get away with something, cops stopping bad guys from doing something, or you have your everyman story, the guy who gets underestimated, kicked to the curb, and has to rise up to take people down. There's a couple other variants in there, right? Like there's the girlfriend gets taken, the family gets murdered or taken out, and this guy has to rise up and train himself to be an assassin, or see a woman doing the same path in Peppermint, which was kind of underestimated. Another film in this genre, a little bit underestimated, by the way, The Accountant. Look it up if you haven't. Point being, it's not fair to compare every movie to John Wick. They are different films, even if there's some similar plot points. This film feels very different. After that switch is clicked, one thing that makes this film really different to me is that it takes a lot of time to explain where he came from, what his past is, why he's able to do all these things with various objects and how he inserts them into human bodies to cause fatal wounds. Also, some great back and forth and dynamics with the family. The estimated thing with this film I really liked, it's an hour and a half. The first John Wick was an hour and 44 minutes. After that, it goes to 2:10, and then I think 2:30 or 2:25, something like that. Like, they got really long, and John Wick just kind of turned into, we really like watching Keanu Reeves kick the crap out of people. This film isn't trying to do that. It puts the brakes on. It actually lets you feel some characters. Christopher Lloyd is a treasure as Hutch's dad in the retirement home, and it's always cool, and I always appreciate when actors age with the ability to maintain their connection to acting. Clint Eastwood, Anthony Hopkins, managed to act into their 80s, some into their 90s. I mean, it's not something that happens for a lot of actors, and I always appreciate it when they're still getting roles like this and getting to just shine on the screen. There's some great side characters in here, some great moments with Hutch's wife. Just something weird to mention in this movie. There's a couple of moments where he does these monologues to essentially dying people, to explain his past, and it must be intentional because they do it twice. But it does kind of stand out because it happens once, and I was like, okay. But then the second time it happens wasn't that far later, and I'm like, oh, he's talking to dead people again about his past. But all right, I mean, cool. I'll tell you my secrets, but only because you're taking them to the grave. Moral of the story, what I really want to get across, it's not a John Wick. This feels very different. Hutch feels very different. He's not somebody who doesn't want to do this and got pulled in because he's just beaten up and had enough. No, he actually kind of likes this. Points where he's sitting there just being like, please let them exit this building so I can break all of their bones. Who would have thought that Bob Odenkirk from Breaking Bad moves into Better Call Saul, kind of this like geeky, greasy, dirtball lawyer character, would ever be at a point that I would believe he'd be roundhouse kicking a knife into someone's leg and then putting a bottle into the side of their skull. I wouldn't know. There's a few things I didn't expect to say this year. One of them would be Bob Odenkirk kicks a whole lot of ass. But I'm glad it happened. He put the work in. It's not just like a whole lot of cuts to make him look good. I mean, there's some scenes out there, there's some movies out there that you watch and you know that actor didn't really put the time in. And I think Bob Odenkirk as Hutch, he's moving, he's blocking, he's clearly put the time in to make these scenes look real and more visceral and violent. I'm again jumping, but there's always fight scenes that stand out to me. It was Paul Walker versus Tony Jaa in the Fast and Furious franchise. So you can tell Paul Walker put the time in to have a good fight. He even let Tony Jaa beat him up in the first fight in there. And that little bit of effort when those actors put it in, it's really appreciated from an audience. The audience can tell. And Keanu's gotten that respect. And I think Odenkirk in this film, I think Hutch has got that respect. Weird point. Anybody watching this, probably a few of you, I'm around my age, whatever. ER, one of my favorite ER moments, George Clooney. There's like a storm drain. There's a kid in it. George Clooney has stopped the car. He's on a horrible day, but he's got to save a life because he's George Clooney on ER. And he ends up saving this kid with, I believe it was like a pen into the neck tracheotomy. Is that what it is? I'm just throwing it out there. I'm sure there's like 18,000 people watching Grey's Anatomy. I'm going to tell you what that medicalness is. He saves him with this like makeshift version of it. And Bob Odenkirk, Hutch in this movie, he actually saves this kid's life in that way. Flashback to George Clooney. It made me smile. I'm like, that's a good scene. All in all, it's a really good, fun action movie. There's a little less action than you might expect. I mean, the action scenes are great and they go off, but this movie does take time to do some characters. I could see them doing sequels to this. Obviously, this film, if we were in a theater mode right now, I think would have found a really cool audience. I think the same people that embraced that Taken, John Wick, the same people that really enjoyed Chris Hemsworth in Extraction. I mean, this is right up your alley. Just visceral action with heart in there, with a couple of funny moments. It moves extremely fast. The editing, like I said, there's a couple of points they over-edit, but then there's a couple points that editing's great. There's this great camera pans up to the moon, comes back down for the next shot. I really like that scene. I don't know. Those little things like that stand out. Your verdict. I'm going to give this movie a 7 out of 10. On an action scale, I think I'd probably rate this one a little higher. I think Bob Odenkirk has found a character here in Hutch that they can have some fun with for a while. Hope you guys really enjoy it. Hope you're enjoying the review content. I'm trying to keep these short, quick, fast to get all the information you need into your brain with a sprinkle of that Salt Bay entertainment, all right? You guys have